Welcome once again, everyone. We're back. Yes, we were here last week, but we're also back and better. We took a week off. We went to the lab. We studied it up. We really hit all the formulas we needed, and we've come to you better than
with
ever.
with confidence, dare I say.
Yep. The Nosebleeds is here and better than ever. And for UFC 274, it's bounce back time, Dom.
Damn right.
Even though you made it clear to me that pay per views are not your strength, they are mine.
Mm.
So I am going to make the most of this week. But even though it's not your strength to do pay per views, Dominic this time has decided to step it up a notch. And he, for the first time, I believe, in this show's history, has put more bets than me for this card. So it's going to be a loaded episode. So make sure to show us some love, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, all that. You can find us on social media. The Below Average Joe's social media is at BAJ_MMA podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, well, that's where you should be only watching this.
Are you bootlegging streaming this somewhere?
It's above Dom's head. Meanwhile, you can find Dominic on Twitter or Instagram at dsleeve14. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at ntbaker_. Also, shout out to our friends over at the Barely Critical Movie Review podcast. They upload an episode a week where they essentially do commentary review a random movie, usually random. They've gone a lot of different directions. Some hits,
Yes.
some movies that I've never even heard of. It's a lot of fun. They're very funny guys, and they work well together. We were on there once before to join them for a review of the Kevin James classic "Here Comes the Boom," one of the only major films to be based around MMA, and actually a pretty good movie, I think. So
Yes, yes.
that was a good time, but this time we didn't go on there to review any sort of MMA movie, but we kept it somewhat in the same.
In the family, you know.
Well, I think a lot of MMA fans would get really upset that we say this is in the same family. But pro wrestling, it's Ready to Rumble, a movie that came out in the year 2000. It's based around kind of WCW. That was who financed or approved the movie to be made. So a lot of fun in that episode. Great content for that episode is what I'll say.
Yeah.
The movie, go find out. But don't even act like you're
No. I'm
Dom's like acting like he's like, oh yeah, ooh, that movie. Oof.
No, I mean, spoiler alert, if you're about to head over there, I gave it the highest score out of everybody by a significant margin, just so you know.
Yeah, but regardless, and Dom may have also been the one that picked the movie, but I mean, neither here nor there. I mean, I think he's going into business for himself here. But that's not what you guys are here to see. But please, link in the description.
Yes.
Should have take you right to the episode. Make sure to subscribe to them if you like it. Drop a like. Let them know that we sent you because we'd like to go back. We're good friends with those guys now, and well, I've been friends with Trevor for a long time.
You brought me in. You know?
I don't want to give you guys too much behind the curtains here, okay?
Yes.
But with that being said, Dominic, I think that clears everything up before we jump right in. And this week's a little different because we don't have anything to recap from last week. I mean, great fights last weekend, but no bets were placed. Unfortunate for the circumstances, but fortunately was spending a lot of time with family last week. So I was in the state of Ohio pretty much the entire week, working from home. Because of that, couldn't place any bets. You know, you guys know how the deal. Ohio's coming soon, though, sports betting. So
This is true.
that will hopefully change maybe by football season. I don't know. You tell me. But because of that, if you haven't joined us for one of these episodes as of late, the way we do this now, we go bottom up on this card. We talk about any bets that we're placing ourselves, anything that maybe stuck out to us as something we did like, we don't like, intriguing bets, anything and everything. And then at the end we'll show you the below average bet slip, but hopefully above average returns.
Damn right.
So, Dominic, you ready to get into this?
Oh, let's go right now. Here we go.
First fight of the night, Journey Newson taking on Fernie Garcia. A bit of unknowns here. Two guys that have kind of, for Newson anyways, has really struggled to find his footing. He's 0-2. His one win did get overturned. I believe that was for marijuana. I could be wrong, but he did have the one win, a knockout win over Domingo Pilarde that got overturned. But he's 0-2 basically officially. Fernie Garcia won his fight on the Contender Series, is making his debut here. I don't remember much from his Contender Series bout, but I guess, Dominic, you look at this fight, we both got money on the line here.
Yeah, we took the favorite here in Fernie Garcia with a money line play just to win straight up minus 150 is believe what we got in on it at as well. This is a guy, of course, making his UFC debut technically, but did get a knockout on the Contender Series. It's definitely a tough test, but he's got a 10-1 record. He's been relatively clean. Only has 4 total finishes if you look outside of that Contender Series finish. So it's a guy that also goes the distance, but he's 6-1 when it goes to the judges' scorecards. Journey Newson, of course, came into the UFC with what would have been a 9-1 record, but has faltered 0-2. Like you said, did technically win, but overturned to a no contest. So he's kind of fighting with his back toward the wall. And a motivated man is scary in MMA, but I just like the upside and I like the potential of Fernie Garcia here making his debut.
Yeah, admittedly, Newson's 0-2. His 2 losses are to pretty good opponents,
Yes.
I believe. Ricardo Ramos, and then who was the most recent loss to?
Oh, I just had it up, and I'm blanking now.
Okay, well, thanks for nothing. No, I'm just kidding. But all I know is coming in here that, once again, I'm the one that put it out there, how Contender Series guys, they win as much as they lose in the UFC. So even if they look good on the Contender Series, don't always drink the Kool-Aid. But here I'm kind of doing it with Fernie Garcia. I thought he looked pretty good for what I remembered of his fight. I just think he's just a better fighter right now. Journey Newson's just kind of struggled to really remain relevant with UFC caliber talent. So I'm putting the money line play on Fernie Garcia minus 150.
Second loss came to Randy Costa via head kick KO. It came to me while we were.
Sorry, Randy, we shouldn't have missed you.
We had to let it go in the brain. That's all. Yeah.
Next fight, Ariane Carnelossi taking on Loopy Godinez, the former LFA strawweight champion.
Yep.
So Dominic coming in here, Loopy Godinez is kind of quietly rising as kind of a fan favorite. She's someone that really steps up, takes fights on short notice. She's scrappy. Mm-hmm. She's a fun fighter to watch. But she is, I believe, 2-2 in the UFC.
Yes.
While Ariane Carnelossi is probably less known to the fan base, but is an absolute finisher.
Yes.
I mean, for women's divisions especially, and she's finishing fights at like an 80% clip. She is a plus 155 here. How do you feel going into this one?
I feel a bit scared now because back-to-back money line plays for me. I went Loopy Godinez, got in on it at minus 170. As Noah said, she's growing to minus 180, so got slightly better odds there. Just a little more return potentially. At least I'm hoping so. But it's definitely a scary fight. What I will say, though, when Loopy comes in with a training camp, she looks good and dominates opponents inside the UFC. When she comes in on short notice with no training camp, up a weight class, that's when things get a little shaky. But she still almost wins. So, yes, she has a 2-2 record, but there is a bit of an asterisk next to it, at least for those 2 losses. She's a great talent. Ariane is scary. Like Noah said, finished 11 out of 14. She's won 2 in a row since losing her UFC debut, and both of her UFC wins have been via finish as well. So, it says one thing when you have all these finishes, in the regional circuit, but when you're keeping that the same in the UFC, that's when it's like legitimately this is someone that possesses the power or the finishing prowess. I'm a little nervous, but I'm confident in Loopy.
Following that, we got 2 guys making one making a debut and one making his return to the octagon, both getting contracts on the Contender Series. You see that pretty much every fight on these cards nowadays. Kleydson Rodrigues, that's with the Y, correct?
Yeah, yes, we think
minus
anyway.
350 going up against CJ Vergara. CJ Vergara, the one that has fought in the UFC previously, he lost his debut. I remember, I can't remember who he fought now, but it was a decent little scrap.
Yeah.
I remember Vergara I remember picking him to win in that fight, and he kind of disappointed down the stretch. Just didn't quite. I remember his Contender Series fight again, drinking the Kool-Aid. The man starched his opponent real quick.
Yeah.
Kleydson Rodrigues was a big standout from last season. That's probably why he's the favorite here. But Dominic, I'm going to be honest, I just have a hard time again. You got 2 guys, Contender Series. It's hard to really lean either way here. I mean, I see why Rodrigues is a favorite. But CJ Vergara at least showed that he was. There goes the dog barking. CJ Vergara at least showed that he could hang with UFC talent. Now, Kleydson Rodrigues may come in here and starch him and show that he is well above that, but it's just hard for me to really lean either way here.
Yeah, this is one that I didn't really want to touch. While it is a bit similar to the Garcia Newson fight, we had just seen a bit more of Newson, in terms of being able to pick Fernie, but also just the lines to be minus 350 with a guy that's making his debut. That means there's potential, don't get me wrong, but it's just a bit scary. Didn't really want to touch this one. Could be a fun scrap, though, and I'm honestly just thinking Noah's dogs bark because they're liking the plus 270 dog value. I don't know.
Yeah, the dogs are barking there. No.
Yeah.
I will say one thing I did kind of like was for this fight to not go to distance. I don't know what those odds are because when I kind of wrote out the odds here, they weren't available yet. But I do think both these guys, very good striking. Because of that, I could see someone getting put out.
Yeah, yeah.
Next up, Tracy Cortez is back. Now, she actually did fight last year, but I did not realize that. I kind of forgot about that fight she had. That's actually, she had fought, who had just beat Lima.
Justine Kish. It was a split decision win. Yeah.
Tracy Cortez coming off a win against Justine Kish, who is now one of the top women in Bellator.
Yeah.
And now she's taking on Melissa Gatto, someone who's, I think a lot of people aren't too sure, what she's got, but her resume looks very impressive coming in here. She is undefeated. Does have 2 draws, weirdly enough, but
yeah.
Combined 5-0 for these ladies in the UFC. Tracy Cortez obviously kind of has some of that, dare I call it, Paige Van Zandt quality, where a lot of people are buying into her star power. She's a very pretty girl, so that's usually not the stereotype for women's fighters. But she's showing that she's actually got quite a bit of talent too. But does she have enough to get past Melissa Gatto, Dom?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the betting lines, these have been closing all week, and I've kept my eyes on this one because my third play of the week, another money line pick. I went with the dog here. Melissa Gatto got in at plus 135. She's closing to plus 125. She was all the way up toward 150, so the line's moving in her favor. I think people are starting to recognize this is a legitimate talent. She's a girl that can finish fights. She can go the distance. 8-0, as Noah said, with 2 draws, but those were outside the UFC. The only thing I worry about here for my underdog play to hit with Gatto is that Cortez, if she can get this fight to the ground, she knows how to control a fight. Now, she's not going to necessarily look for finishes. She's only got 2 out of 9 wins, but she can ride out decisions very easily. But if Gatto can stay off of her back and pose threats, keep the pressure on Cortez, I feel very comfortable getting the dog value on Melissa.
Yeah, I definitely think this fight to go to distance is a must play. I really do. Don't get me wrong. Melissa Gatto, 6 finishes in her 10 fights, and 2 of those were draws. So 4 decisions. She's 2-0-2 in decisions, but you got Tracy Cortez 7-0 in decisions. So it's a tough one. The longer this fight goes, it makes me wonder if it favors Cortez. But Melissa Gatto, I think, will be game here the whole way.
Yes, yes.
Next up, Andre Fialho. We just talked about him a couple weeks ago. He said he wanted to get another fight. Dana and the boys gave it to him. And he's a massive favorite here, minus 400. That's a first for him in his UFC career.
Yeah.
He's going on against a debutante in Cameron VanCamp. Funny enough, VanCamp kind of filling the shoes of what Fialho was doing for Michelle Pereira just a couple months ago. So,
very true.
Andre Fialho looked fantastic in his last outing. The shot, the stand-up looked great. The powerful shots he landed to put out Miguel Baeza in the first round. I think these odds make a lot of sense. I think Andre Fialho money line might be a nice piece for a parlay. Cameron VanCamp, I'm sure, is going to be pretty good, but also, he's not a big turnaround for. He's getting the call up here pretty short notice, and because of that, it's going to be a tough fight. A guy that's really riding some momentum coming off that win against Baeza. I think Fialho money line's a pretty decent parlay play here.
Yeah, I like that. If you're wanting to do that, and of course, it's hard when someone's minus 400 if you're not parlaying them. So if you feel confident, Andre Fialho is a guy that's finished 13 out of 15 wins. So if you're confident there to get those odds back down to maybe even some plus money there, I don't have them in front of me. I'd say it's pretty close, if not plus value for a finish. There could be value. I will say though, you got to be careful. VanCamp has 5 losses, only been finished twice. This guy's a scrapper. It's his debut. He's coming in with big underdog stakes. He could cause an upset, man. You never know. Andre Fialho's good, but there's still just more to see from him, I believe. But the Miguel Baez win was a step in the right direction.
Following that, heavyweight action, a 15 spot on the line, perhaps. Blagoy Ivanov takes on Marcos Rogerio de Lima. Now, de Lima is a guy I had kind of wrote off, Dom, coming on, his last few performances. I was kind of like, a bit wishy-washy. And then he goes up against Ben Rothwell and absolutely pummels him in 2 minutes, knocks him out on his. I mean, that was pretty much. I think that was one of the weird Herb Dean stoppages.
Yeah, some people are like, yeah.
I think he knocked him out, and then Herb didn't stop it right away, but then he did. Weird stuff. But Rogerio de Lima knocked him out. Don't be mistaken. He showed some crazy power in that fight. And he's not a young guy. He's like 35 years old, I think. And Blagoy Ivanov, a bit older, a bit less active at this point. He's kind of hung on to this number 15 spot. Only 2 and 3 in the
dude,
UFC.
Did that not confuse you? Because I felt like he's fought way more than 5 times in the UFC.
Look, I really don't know where to lean on this one. I really don't, because it's easy to look at the last fight and kind of think De Lima may have a bit more youth vigor left in him, may be just a bit more active, a bit more aggressive early, and Ivanov, he might starch Ivanov early. But Blagoy Ivanov is a veteran, man, and he has that kind of quality about him where he could really snuff out a lot of that aggression early, weather the storm, and then kind of take this into the later rounds and kind of punish De Lima for even trying that out so early. So I don't lean either way here. I really think you're kind of taking your chance by picking either of these guys, and really by any method. It's just I'm not confident in any of it.
Yeah, this is one. Don't want to even think about it.
Next one's a lot of fun, though. Flyweight action. Brandon Royval versus Matt Schnell. 2 top 10 flyweights. Brandon Royval just not too long ago getting a win over Kaikar France, who's now on his way to about to fight for a title, perhaps. So, Matt Schnell, man, I mean, we've talked about him so many times on the show, but we've only seen him fight maybe one time because the guy he was booked with Alex Perez, or not? Was it Alex Perez and him?
Yeah, like 8 times last year.
Yeah, and every time it fell through for one reason or another. They finally moved on from that matchup. Here he is against Royval. Royval coming off a split decision win over against Rogerio Bontoran. A pretty fun fight. One that I thought Royval got the win, and I thought he deserved the win. But
and should have had a sub win, remember?
Well, that's true. Yeah, I forgot about that. I remember I was pretty upset about that.
I think you had to bet on him, if I'm not mistaken, by
I had
finish.
to bet on him by finish. So, I was not too happy about that. Look, I'm a big Raw Dog Royval guy. I mean, I really am. Matt Schnell's good. He's good, and the styles are such a clash here. And I talked about this yesterday on our preview. Go check that out. But Royval is just an agent of chaos. He is a wild card, as they say. His submissions are so slick that in these sprawls and these scrambles, it's very easy for him to kind of, like an anaconda, wrap himself around you and get a submission.
Yeah.
Matt Schnell, I believe, is a pretty good wrestler, but he operates more in a composed environment, more of your standard fight environment, if I'm not mistaken. And also, the guy's been a bit chinny in the past. He's been knocked out a couple times, so I don't think he would bode too well in that kind of chaotic, limbs flying everywhere atmosphere. I think he'd be likely to get caught. I like Brandon Royval a lot straight up. Minus 240, a bit steep for me to take this straight on, so you'll see later I end up getting a little creative in a parlay. So Brandon Royval, big time for me.
Yeah, and I could see too. It just kind of gives me when Royval fought Kaikar France, where he was able to land a good shot on Kai and drop him, but he finishes him by sub. And the same could apply here to Matt Schnell, where we've seen Schnell get injured, but he doesn't necessarily get subbed hardly ever. But if he gets hurt on the feet, Royval can then capitalize it. Royval by sub is plus 150. That's all I'm saying. If you don't want to play the minus 240 or parlay it, it's worth a sprinkle.
Following that, a women's featherweight fight. Yeah, that division's still going.
With 2 ranked bantamweights. What the hell are we doing? What the hell are we doing?
I did not realize that they're both ranked.
It's ridiculous, man. What are we doing?
Macy Chiasson is taking on Norma Dumont, who was in a headlining spot in the best fight night headliner of the year against Aspen Ladd.
True.
Dominic was a really big fan of that fight going in.
Yeah, very.
Macy Chiasson, I believe, has been matched up with Aspen Ladd a few times, and that fight never being able to come to fruition. So really you got a case here where Norma Dumont is a pretty big favorite, and I'm kind of surprised by that, if I'm being honest. I think these lines are a little skewed in her favor for a reason I'm not quite sure about. Sure, she has a win over Aspen Ladd, but you look at, I get it, Aspen Ladd was like this top-ranked women's bantamweight, but I'm being honest, that was mostly projection. I do not think that she has ever fought like a top 5 women's bantamweight. Macy Chiasson, I gotta stop saying it like
That's
that.
how it is, though. You're right.
She has shown it. Honestly, I feel like I'm just wasting my breath talking about this fight. I mean, it's women's featherweight. It's 2 ranked women's bantamweights. This fight really doesn't matter, and I just don't care enough about it to even think to put a bet on it.
And again, I now love this fight. Norma Dumont must be my new favorite fighter. But seriously, I did take Norma in this one by decision. She was sitting there at plus 100. Listen, Norma is 7-1 in her career. 5-0, or 5-0 when it comes down to the decision. I almost did her via sub or decision, a double method, but I'm like, is she really going to get a finish? I don't see it. All of her wins in the UFC have been that way. I think she gets it done again here. Minus 225 is a bit scary, but if I'm going to pick her to win, I'm going to pick how she's going to do it, and I think she gets it done that way.
Well said. Next up, Francisco Trinaldo. What a guy this guy is. Pick and fight of the week here, and he's back, 43 years young, taking on Danny Roberts. Danny Roberts is up there. If I'm not, he's not just some young guy, is he?
I guess when you compare him to Francisco, yes,
well,
but right,
yeah. But much as youth, much as younger, much the elder here is Trinaldo. But Dominic, Trinaldo is not just hanging around. This guy is winning fights. I believe he's won 4 of his last 5 fights. Now the key here is he's winning most of these by decision. Danny Roberts has sort of taken a turn in his career. Once a guy that was known to finish at a pretty decent rate. He's been on a bit of a decision run as of late, playing things a little more safer maybe, in the hopes of trying to build up a bit of a winning streak. And that's why I love this fight to go to distance. I do. Yeah. It's very close. I mean, Trinaldo, it's basically a pick'em here, and there's a good reason for that. But as far as where this fight ends, I think it goes to the judges' scorecards. That's minus 150. To me, I felt like that's a pretty safe pick. Don't get me wrong, both these guys have the capabilities to finish the fight. I mean, why am I even saying that? They're fighters. They're looking to do that. But just look at the trend as of late. I like to do that, not just over their whole career, but what they've done as of late. And
of course.
I think the styles match up well for this fight to go the full 15 minutes.
Yeah, I like that, man. I do.
Next up.
Uh-oh.
An interesting one here. Friend of the show, Randy Brown, comes in to take on, talk about an agent of chaos. How about a man with the first name Chaos Williams? These are 2 guys that are known for a lot of fun fights. Yeah. But not just fun fights, but guys that have true potential to really take another step here, Dom, in their careers. But it starts here, survive and advance. And I want to hear who you are leaning in this matchup.
Yeah, this is a fun scrap, man. 2 guys that are never in dull fights. I think the winner of this gets a top 15 opponent next. There's a big implications, I believe, and it's in a good spot on those prelims. I think it is the prelim headliner, right? So it deserves to be there. But I went with another moneyline play, the 4th and final one for me of the week. I went Randy Brown. He was plus 100 at the time of the bet. He's plus 105 now. I think this fight is close to a pick'em. It's a scary one. It's definitely probably the money line play I'm the most nervous about because Chaos carries sledgehammers with his hands. But if Randy can weather that storm, I think he's just the more well-rounded fighter should the fight go to the ground. I think he's even more elusive on the feet in terms of his techniques and what he can do with his attacks. So if he can weather that power, manage that, I think Randy Brown can get this done. And at plus money, I'm willing to take a risk.
I completely agree with everything you said, but that equalizer that Chaos Williams possesses was enough to where
it's scary. Yeah.
Let's talk about the main card, and we start with Cowboy Cerrone taking on Joe Lauzon, an absolute legend fight here. Donald Cerrone up to a minus 180 for a guy who hasn't won a fight in his last 7 outings.
It's crazy.
Very interesting that he's such a massive favorite, but he is going up against Joe Lauzon, who has not fought inside of the UFC since 2019.
Yeah.
So, Dominic, you look at this fight. 2 guys that are really past their prime, that are hitting the end of the road, perhaps. Do you like anything with this fight? Is there any plays that stick out to you?
I was too nervous for this one. You want to talk about something I feel like a pick'em should be? It should be this fight. I'm almost flabbergasted that Cerrone's coming in at. The line is growing as we get closer to Saturday. If he ends up being like a 2-1, I will be absolutely stunned. But that's the trend that we're seeing here so far. Listen, he took a year off, and that's something Cerrone's not used to doing. So I like that he took some time away. But he's back here against another veteran. Hasn't fought since October 2019. Lauzon, that is. But I just was not confident enough to pick necessarily a winner. And honestly, while you kind of did do something I'll let you discuss, I didn't even want to do rounds if it goes the distance, over-unders. I don't know what's going to happen in this fight, but I'm here for it.
Yeah, see, I feel like in my mind I have a better feeling about this one. I mean, I have 2 different plays for this fight alone. One of them will be on a parlay. I'll talk about that later. But Donald Cerrone money line, look, I got it at minus 165, and I understand the risk involved. This is a guy, again, I just said it, hasn't won a fight in his last 7 outings. But you look at the competition he was fighting. It's been said before, right? Especially the first 5 fights on that 7-fight streak. It's not a losing streak technically, but streak without a win.
Yeah.
You know what's the competition is Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor. Who am I missing on that? Anthony Pettis.
Yep.
I think there's one more I'm missing there.
I mean, the one that stands out in terms of name value that isn't as strong is the loss last year to Alex Morano, though. In the first
but that's not. I was talking about the first.
Yeah.
Five, but
yeah.
After that is where he did take a step back. He fought Nico Price. That was a draw. Kind of got lucky. He didn't lose the decision there. Nico Price had a point deducted. Then he fights Alex Morano, kind of in that same group as like a Nico Price, and Morano starches him in the first round.
Yeah.
As Cowboy has had happen to him a few times in his career. It's a year later. He's going up against Lauzon, who is a very aggressive fighter early, has 8 first-round finishes. So I'm seeing a lot of people leaning Lauzon in the first round. But I trust Cerrone here. This is probably his last fight. You see how emotional he is this week. This is a guy that's a legend of the sport, a guy whose highs in the sport have been higher than Joe Lauzon. And despite the respect I have for Lauzon's talent, to me, not fighting since 2019, any interview you've seen with him since then, he's basically said, I'm basically done unless, I get a fight that really interests me. And this is the kind of fight that brought him off the couch. I'm sure he's still training and whatnot, but it's just different. It's different when you remove yourself from the game, it's different. There's a bit of complacency, a bit of like kind of committing to life after the sport, right? So to me, I trust Cerrone to be the more fighting in shape here, just the more prepared and ready to go. And overall, I think even up to this point, I think he's still probably the better fighter, even despite the I guess wars, the damage he's accumulated, and all that combined. I think he could very much lose this fight real quickly, real early. Longer his fight goes, I think it favors him.
Yes.
But also, I don't think this fight goes the distance either, and you'll hear me talk about that later. So I think there's a lot of fun plays on here. Even if you like Lauzon a lot, I mean, that round 1 plus 800 by finish,
Yeah.
That's definitely sticking out to some people, and I can't argue with it.
Right,
Cerrone's
right.
been finished 7 times in round one. Just saying.
Scary, scary.
Next up, another, I guess you'd call it a legend fight. Shogun Hua, definitely a legend. And then you
Yeah,
got OSP, Oven St. Preux, a guy that has been just been around a long time.
he has, man.
Um,
Fought for an interim
fought,
belt, even.
yep, yes, that's true. He's the one that stepped in for Daniel Cormier, fought John Jones at UFC 197. That was supposed to be the first card that I ever watched. I wasn't
Yep.
able to make it to Dom's that night. So instead, I got UFC 199, which I think is a better story.
Yeah, you made it out better.
Yeah. So here, Shogun Hua, we haven't seen him since he tapped to strikes when he fought a rematch with Paul Craig. Um, you want to know what's under his kilt? It's me quoke. That interview still cracks me up.
I know.
Is that your kibbles and bits under there? No, it's me quoke.
Are sporting the traditional Scottish kilt. What is under? Yes, please.
You want to see? It's my
Your kibbles and bits?
it's my cock.
No.
I'm gonna have to try and find the clip. Anyway.
Ovid St. Preux. Dom, I'm struggling with this fight too because I was really close to putting money on Hua here. Plus
Yeah.
195, I think, is pretty good value for him. Yes, I know the last performance wasn't great, but Paul Craig is fucking good, man.
Yeah, he is.
And you look before that, like he had that decision win against Little Nog, but Little Nog was, I mean, very talk about washed up fighters. I mean,
Yeah.
he was like way past it. Before that, he had the draw with Paul Craig. That was a great fight.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like though that was 2020. We're talking about the last time we saw him. Oven St. Preux been more active, but if anything, I think that's been to his detriment because
Yeah.
his last few performances, he had that really iffy run at heavyweight that like just didn't work out. But with each passing performance, it seems like he's less and less in the fight. He seems to get tired quicker. He seems to kind of give up at times and kind of quit quicker than he would before. I'm not seeing a lot of motivation behind him in these performances. Almost like he's just there to get a paycheck, and that's no disrespect intended anyway. I mean, I guess anybody would take it that way, but I like OSP a lot. I just don't see the same guy that I saw just a couple years ago.
Yeah, and the same guy that got a 34-second knockout against Shogun in 2014.
It's true.
And I almost wonder, like, does that result nearly 8 years later? Is that playing into the odds being so lopsided to OSP? I mean, I would think not, being that it was so long ago, but maybe, just maybe, I didn't want to touch this fight. I don't know who's going to win this fight. This is another one that feels to me like a pick'em, but the odds are so far from that. The legend Mauricio could show up and get one last win, even though I thought he was retired after his last fight with Craig. OSP, the guy seems like he's going to fight forever, even though we've seen a bit of a regression and a lack of kind of willingness is what it's looked like lately. He could get back on track here too.
I would also say the odds are probably because of the activity. Who
Yeah.
have been out
Yeah.
of there since 2020. OSP still fighting for what it's worth.
Right.
Next one, Michael Chandler taking on Tony Ferguson, a fight that should get a lot of people excited, but I feel like a lot of people are just kind of, I think they're excited for this fight, but I think there's a lot of people that are scared for this fight because a lot of people are big Tony Ferguson fans, but his struggles as of late have been well documented. I mean, since COVID, he's 0-3. Before that, he had the 12-fight winning streak, but then now he's lost about, if I do the math right, I think he's lost 16 rounds in a row.
Yeah.
Wait, that's not right. In 3 fights, that's not even possible.
5, 3, and 3. 11 rounds in a row.
11 rounds in a row. Here against Michael Chandler, who is 1-2 in the UFC, but that's probably about as good of a 1-2 as you can get.
Yeah.
Are you leaning more to the minus 380, Dom, or is that plus 290 for Tony Ferguson sticking out to you a little bit?
I feel like while I didn't have any place for this, I would tend to lean toward Michael Chandler. But again, it's like if you're not parlaying him, what are you going to get out of minus 380? I will say, going through the Twitter sphere and seeing all the bets and the people I follow, I've seen a lot of people discussing 2 things for this fight. One, the fight to go the distance, which is at plus money, if I'm not mistaken, or very close to. And number 2, Michael Chandler to win by decision. I believe at most books that's a plus 200 or higher. DraftKings, which is what we use, was plus 240. So I've seen a lot of people doing that, and it tends to kind of match up with what Chandler's saying. It looks like he's going to have a different approach to this fight, going to use his wrestling, not get into as much of a firefight as we've seen. Now, we know that you can say that all you want, but when you're in the cage, it's a different beast, and especially when Tony Ferguson's across the cage from you. I'm too nervous to touch it, but I would lean Chandler.
My play that I really liked, and it kind of goes hand in hand with some of those plays that everybody's been talking about, this fight to go over 1.5 rounds. I don't have a ton of success with these over-unders, but here at minus 165, Chandler and Ferguson, very durable guys. And again, I'm leaning Michael Chandler pretty heavily in this matchup. And it's all about how much punishment Tony Ferguson can withstand, and that guy has withstood anything and everything that's been thrown at him up to this point. Yes, he got finished in round 5 against Gaethje, but that was on his feet. He never went down.
Yeah.
Madness. So maybe Tony can turn back the clock here and give us a performance that reminds us of the old Tony, but regardless, I think this fight goes into the halfway point of round 2 at least.
I agree.
Minus 165, by the way, on that. Co-main event, Rose Namajunas, the strawweight champion of the world, will be defending against Carla Esparza. This is a rematch 8 years in the making. The first time they fought was for the inaugural women's strawweight title fight, and Carla Esparza dominated her way to a decision victory. Here
Submitted
she
her.
is. Oh, submitted her. I didn't realize that.
Round
I thought it was
3.
a decision. Okay. Thank you for correcting me. I had no idea that was the way that went down. So here it is, 8 years later. Carla Esparza, after having a long road to get back here, she lost her next title fight to Joanna Jędrzejczyk in a very, very dominant fashion.
Yeah.
If she wins this fight, it would be the longest gap between title reigns in UFC history. Very impressive stuff that she's back here, but she is a plus 170 underdog, Dom.
Yeah.
Do you think that is that aligned with kind of how the thoughts in your head, a plus 170, even though she is coming off of a win in the first fight?
Yeah, dare I say, this feels like the perfect betting line to me. It does. Rose Namajunas has been one of the most dominant women the past few years in all of the weight classes. Even when she's in rematches, she's 4-0 in rematches. So she's just so good everywhere. The evolution of her game compared to Carla when they first fought in December 2014 is the biggest takeaway for me. While Carla has improved, it's the same fighting style. Rose, she's just grown leaps and bounds and become one of the most well-rounded fighters that there is in the UFC, in my opinion. So I think a minus 200 makes sense for her. I did do a play here. I did Rose Namajunas to win by submission or decision. It's a double chance, but it's minus 125. When there's favorites that are minus 200 or higher, I want to see how can I get it down to as close to, if not plus money, if I can. I didn't feel comfortable necessarily picking outright a method, but if I can do 2 or 3, I like those chances. I tend to have success with these, and I have the submission rather than the KO and decision because I have this odd feeling in my tummy that we may just see Rose potentially get this fight to the ground and get on top, whether it's started with strikes on the feet or she shoots for a takedown just to throw Carla off of her game. I think it's possible that she gets a submission. I will say the decision plays more of a factor into that bet for me, but I wanted to take both minus 125.
I'm going to push back a little bit against what you said. I don't think Rose has been one of the more dominant women in the division. I mean, I think part of the excitement is that each fight she's kind of fighting through adversity. I mean, the Zhang Weili rematch, she barely won that fight. I mean, a lot of people thought she didn't win that fight. Yes, before that she did have the first round head kick KO, but then you go before that, I mean, the wars with Andrade, the wars with Joanna, I mean, I wouldn't say dominant's the right word to describe her, but I do think a minus 200 favorite against Carla is justified, but I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find her to dominate this fight. Now, you're right, the rematches, that's a real thing. I mean, when she fights an opponent a second time, she seems to be much more prepared for them and at least switches things up enough to where it causes her opponents to be a step behind. I think that's very much in play here against Carla Esparza. But I think those 4 no-nos rematches, I bet every rematch has went to the distance as well. And I think that that's also in play here, too. I look at this fight to go to a decision, probably at 48-47, 49-46, but a clear victory for Rose is what I'm thinking here.
Mm-hmm.
Main event time. Lightweight title. Charlie Olives, as Dan Hooker once called him. He's back to defend his title against Justin Gaethje, tied for that number one contender spot. I know Dominic loves.
I love it so much.
Those ties in the rankings.
Yeah.
But the very clear number one contender as it pertains to this division. Charles Oliveira, as of now, minus 170. This line's been moving back and forth quite a bit. He got nearly to a minus 200 yesterday, but then now it's went back down. Justin Gaethje now sits at a plus 150. I think I love that Charles Oliveira is getting the respect he deserves. And yet, this is the matchup that I feel most shaken about for him.
Yeah.
With Michael Chandler, I felt like I liked him a lot in that matchup. With Dustin Poirier, I was one of the few that really liked him in that matchup. Here against Justin Gaethje, it's a different story for me. I still think he has more routes to victory, Dom. I really do. I think that he's the more well-rounded fighter, excellent jiu-jitsu, excellent Muay Thai striking, isn't a quitter. he is shown to be very durable, especially compared to some of his older fights. His fight IQ is at an all-time high. But he's going up against a hammer, Justin Gaethje. Not only does Justin Gaethje have some of the hardest-hitting strikes in the division, but he's got Trevor Whitman as his coach behind him who has fleshed out his entire game. He comes in with a very high-credentialed background in wrestling, but never uses it, but can use it to defend the takedowns, to use it defensively. Because of that, I'm not confident in any takedowns in this fight, and maybe you get a sprawl and Charles takes his back. I saw one of our commenters said something about that in our last episode from yesterday, that really the straight-up takedowns isn't what Charles really thrives. It's more in the scrambles and in being able to get the back so easily. And I do see what he's saying there. But as far as any plays for this fight is so even to me. I was actually, Dominic, I'm going to be honest, as much as I love Charles, there was a part of me that thought about putting something on Justin Gaethje here at plus 150.
Yeah.
I just think that he's the toughest test to date, and obviously you got Islam coming up, and we'll see what the lines look like for that one. But here, I'm kind of avoiding this one. Fight to not go to distance is something that, probably should be in play. It really should be.
Yeah.
I didn't put it just because I don't know. I don't know what
to not go the distance is super high.
Yeah, but it's definitely a good parlay piece.
Oh yeah, for sure. And this fight, it's funny. We talked about this on the preview show yesterday. For those that don't listen to the podcast, you should, by the way. Charles is finally getting that respect that we've wanted for him over these last couple of these elite fights that he's been in. He's been the underdog, but it's like he should be the favorite because he's the champ, but I'm a little nervous that he is the favorite at the same time. So it's just crazy how crazy this division is. Justin Gaethje, like Noah said, is a hammer. He's got the power, some of the best, if not the best, at 155. The base over-under for this fight was set at 1.5. I dug into the alternate round totals and went under 2.5 rounds. It was sitting there at minus 145. I think that's incredible value. I'm giving myself 5 more minutes than what the base is. And, the odds are still pretty close. Pretty good value, if you ask me. Under 2.5, that's putting me at 12.5 minutes long. If that fight goes past this, we're going to be talking fight of the year contender. I'll tell you that much.
There you go. And that's going to wrap it up here. Let's get to the below average bet slip now. You got the graphic made, Dominic.
Sorry. Airtime.
And while you're pulling that up, I guess I could talk about my parlay.
There it is.
It's a 2-leg parlay, plus 104 are the odds on that one. Brandon Royval money line, and then Cerrone Lozon to not go to distance. Both plays that I feel very highly in, but obviously they on their own are a little steep into the minus. So putting those together, plus 104, I think it's a safe parlay. I really do. Royval and Schnell, that could be an interesting dilemma there. But I really think Cerrone Lozon, whichever way that fight goes, I don't think it goes to full 15.
Yeah, I like that parlay a lot, especially to come out at plus money, regardless of how much it is. I love it. I think they're both very possible. And this is a very full bet slip, my friend. We've got 12 plays. We've got 2 units on Fernie, which is the first fight of the night. So the vibes are either going to be at an all-time high or an all-time low to kick off UFC 274, man.
That's so true. Well, that's going to wrap it up here for us from the Nosebleeds to Below Average Joes. Let us know what plays you're making for this weekend. What sportsbook are you using? Where are you going to be watching the fights? Anything and everything, let us know in the comments. But we will be back next week with, once again, back to fight nights, back to really digging deep on some cards. So that's Dominic Salee. I'm Noah Baker. We're the Below Average Joes, and we'll see you next Friday.